So have you ever been asked the question, so what do you do? And you answer it with something like, I work in insurance. And you go home later that night and then you think to yourself, wow, am I really that boring? Successful people know how to articulate their purpose and they can make it very clear to others in a very concise way. And over time, they become one with their purpose. By the end of this video, you'll have a framework in your back pocket to answer the question, so what do you do better next time? So the framework I'm referring to is called the Golden Circle, and it's a model for communicating and inspiring people. And most often, companies are using this to position themselves in the market, to differentiate themselves, but individuals can use it too. And it consists of three components: the why, the how, and the what. So this concept of the Golden Circle comes from the book Start With Why by the author Simon Sinek, and the why is defined as your purpose. It's your belief. It's the reason why you do what you do, and this rarely changes. The how, which is the next concentric circle, is your process or your unique way of doing things, and it's what sets companies apart from their competitors. And this can change from time to time. And the last bit of the circle is the what. It's the product, service, or offering that your company or you might have in the market, what you do, and it's a tangible thing, right? And it's something that you do day in and day out, like the thing when you say, I work in insurance. And this changes pretty often. And so when we answer the question, so what do you do? And we answer it with something like, I work in insurance. Well, I think part of the reason why we feel uncomfortable in answering it that way is simply because the thing we're doing at the time might change pretty soon in the future. Like we may not always insurance. Maybe we'll decide to go work, in the food industry. And like there has to be some overarching narrative to why we're doing something, and that's not being expressed clearly. And for me, this was my exact problem. I was addressing the question by just talking about the tip of the iceberg, which is just the what, and not focusing on the how or the why. So just to give you an analogy, just imagine a map, and your destination is the why. The how are maybe the routes that you're going to take. Maybe you decide to take the highway or some back routes. And you know what? If the roads are closed or there's traffic, well, you're not going to just stop trying to get to your destination. You're going to take another route. Or maybe you'll decide to take an alternative method of transportation, like you'll decide to fly. And the what would be the type of car that you drive. Maybe it's a manual, maybe it's an automatic, or if you decide to fly, it's the airline that you take. So Simon Sinek says that most people in organizations, where they fall short is that they communicate from the outside in as opposed to the inside out. In other words, they start with the what as opposed to the why. When you communicate from the inside out, again, starting with the why, that's when you're really showcasing your purpose, your beliefs, instead of just your function, and that's the mistake that most people make. All right, so let's make this a little bit more tangible. Here's some situational examples of the Golden Circle in companies, and hopefully that'll help to illuminate why it's so effective. So let's take Apple. They're a great example. Their why is really clear. It's to challenge the status quo and to think differently. And their how is by doing it by designing beautifully made products that are user-friendly and innovative. And finally, we get to the what. This is what makes Apple kind of on par with other companies like Microsoft. The what is they make computers, they make smartphones, tablets, and other electronic devices. But say if somebody were to ask Steve Jobs, so what do you do? And he's like, well, I make computers and smartphones. I mean, you kind of get the idea. It's not as interesting as saying like, we're doing something innovative that's like really, we're pushing the boundary to make products that are user friendly and trying to really challenge the status quo at the time. Steve Wozniak really challenging what it meant for computers to be on the market and to sort of exist in a more personal computing fashion as opposed to how they always had been. They were really pushing things. All right, Nike is another example. So they exist to inspire people to achieve their full potential. And how do they do it? They design and sell innovative athletic products and services. And their what are the athletic shoes, the clothing, and the equipment that they make. And the last example is Tesla. Why do they exist? To accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy. And how do they do it? They design and build electric vehicles. And their what are the electric cars they make, the different models they have, the batteries that they produce, the solar panels, and all the other engineering that goes into making Tesla cars. And so when I look back at times when I felt most inspired about the way that I communicate what I do to other people, it's kind of gone like this. So I used to work in healthcare. I studied healthcare in college, and early on in college, I realized like I wanted to be more on the business side of healthcare. I wanted to be on the side that was pushing innovation and changing the way that the industry worked, as opposed to just being a healthcare provider. And so slowly, as I was trying to define what that meant for me, the why that I would communicate to others was to make healthcare more equitable. My why, that didn't change for like 7 or 8 years. It was something that drove me through different companies and allowed me to experiment and kind of push me to keep trying and trying different things. The how was by working at disruptive startups that were leading innovation in healthcare. And finally, the what was my function, my job, in other words. I worked in marketing and analytics. I worked in product. And by communicating like the function, again, as the what, I always put that in the context of this greater why. Like, I'm working in marketing, but in the context of driving innovation in healthcare. And I think for this particular YouTube channel, like, I've had to really think quite hard about what is that why. And I think I'm starting to land on something like this. It's to give people simple frameworks to build their unique knowledge toolkits so they can reach their full potential. And how am I doing it? Well, me and Jenna, we're doing it by creating actionable, objective, and thought-provoking content and service offerings eventually. And the what would probably be the YouTube videos that we're producing and the different content and the themes that we're kind of exploring and trying out to see what makes the most sense for this channel and for what people want to watch. So that's content which we've initially done heavily in the personal finance space, and we've moved a little bit more into entrepreneurship. And now like exploring kind of more like in this video in frameworks, and eventually it might be also like the courses that we sell in the community that we're trying to build. That's the what. All right, so to sum it all up and give you something that's actionable, I would recommend start by asking yourself the question, why do you do what you do? And think really carefully about like what it is that pulls you out of bed in the morning. Why do you want to get out of bed? Why do you want to help the world? What do you want to do for the world? And the important thing is that this isn't just about money. In other words, if you weren't getting paid to do something, would you still do it? From there, you can use your why to help inform your how and your what. How do you do things differently? And what makes you good at what you do? And the last thing is be authentic and genuine, and just always be yourself. Be that, just that in how you communicate. And people will be able to tell if you're not being sincere. So always keep that in the back of your mind. Guys, thank you so much for watching. If you found this video helpful, please go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It really does help us out. And if you have any questions, feel free to let us know down below. Until next time, thank you and take care.